Namaste and welcome, beloved mighty companions. This truly is the Joining a Light Brigade. So, when that name came, how could we know? He knows. He knows how blessed we are to be together in this one holy purpose. And how much stick to it takes, because the ego doesn't stick to anything other than itself, trying to prove God's dead. Favorite pastime. And just start to see how much full focus it takes because of the play in consciousness to focus on everything except infinite. And we were joining today, which is our function to join here, so that it's really immediate, the faster. And it was a good reminder because it can seem like beings are busy here. And it was a good reminder for me. It's because it's not about doing, it's about being. And the way we discover being in the way given by Jesus is keep joining with our brother, because that denies the ego. So if it seems like we're busy, then there's a doer involved somewhere. Yes, there are things in function that we, do throughout the day, but we just always check in with Jesus. Are we avoiding joining in any way, or are we into the doing? Because that little interruption of somebody coming to say, yeah, I want to join, is given by Jesus to break that pattern of the busy doings. I got things to do. So we can go, okay, who's that one that's speaking? So we were talking about Tuesday's session. Lena and I are talking, and we're talking about, okay, so why, sometimes we just don't want to talk to Jesus at all. So we thought we'd just dedicate Tuesday to have a joining, to have a discussion with Jesus directly about why am I not talking to you all day long? Now we can read it in the book, but the ego can find its way to distance from that reading. It's got its little filters, its little shields up. But when Jesus comes from the inside and then shows you the belief in sacrifice to talk with him, it's helpful. Because he's the one who can really teach us how consciousness plays, how we misuse consciousness to deny ourselves divine light. Okay, Jesus, I'm willing to see it. He says that's playing down in the catacombs, the catacombs of consciousness, of the subconscious mind. It's a snoozing. So he's coming in here with the teacher's manual. I'm really grateful because he's reminding me about, and what Muji talks about all the time, marinate as the light. You're that. He's reminding in the how should the teacher of God spend his day? And he always answers, with me. That sounds like a really good topic for Tuesday, to find out why we're not spending, what are all the reasons we're not spending our day with him? I have a feeling it's going to be a little talk on sacrifice, a belief in sacrifice, but it's really good because we can, each of us, ask and hear and speak the voice for God and hear it come right through us. And see that it's not Jesus is not the boogeyman coming to get us, to limit us. Perhaps the one generalization that can be made is this: as soon as possible after waking, take your quiet time, continuing a minute or two after you begin to find it difficult. So he's saying, that the ego is going to try to bail. And we need the light training to see that we're more powerful than when the ego comes in. Oh, I got to go. I can't spend this quiet time with Jesus or the light. Continuing a minute or two after you begin to find it difficult, you may find that the difficulty will diminish and drop away. And we can ask for his help. If not, it's time to stop. The same procedures, because the ego gets involved in forcing things too. So we really have to ask them. It gets very handy to go, Jesus, do I keep going with this, or is it time to stop? And then hear him say, and just follow that. And it just becomes much more relaxing. The same procedure should be followed at night. Perhaps your quiet time should be fairly early in the evening, if it's not feasible for you to take it just before going to sleep. It is not wise to lie down. We were talking about that yesterday. It is better to sit up in whatever position you prefer. Having gone through the workbook, you must have come to some conclusions in this respect. If possible, just before going to sleep is a desirable time to devote to God. That's just asking for so little and gives so much. He said yes. He said this is only necessary until you see that there's no value in spending your time with anything other than God. Devote your mind full time to healing every moment of every day. Are we not valuable enough to clear out all the blocks to noticing that supreme happiness is already here? That's really the question. Do we value ourselves enough, have faith in ourselves enough, that knowing God, that willingness 24/7 is valuable? See, the ego will tell us that it's not. You can ask Jesus, the ego going to tell me that it's not possible to be with God 24/7? Because the ego will start going, well, I have all these things to do. How are you going to live if you're with God? The only way to live is if you're with God. The only life is that. The ego convinces its little projects are life. No, life is what we are. Life is our identity, all that is. Happiness is identity. It sets your mind into a pattern of rest and orients you away from fear. Okay, Jesus. Thank you for this reminder. It's easy to forget not to spend that time with God before we go to sleep. If it is expedient to spend this time earlier, at least be sure that you do not forget a brief period, not more than a moment will do, in which you close your eyes and think of God. That's how powerful one thought of God is. He's directly pointing to that. He says, yes, one thought of God, one thought of light, one thought. Wow. You see the power in that single thought of infinite light. Like we always explore in the play of consciousness is to explore limitation like it's given rather than infinite, rather than just noticing what's here that's infinite, unchanged by time or space, the unmoving. To see immediately that all is given and all is forgiven. And yeah, Lena these joinings are so beautiful because they're such great reminders to look with Jesus, and she's mentioning how, yeah, some days I'm like so at peace, and that is our inheritance. And then you'll notice that then some days it's like, I've been in this Course in Miracles, it seems to be getting worse. No, we're more sensitive when we're stepping into the closet of hell. And so it's much more painful. So it's not that it's getting worse. It's finally that it's no longer buried anymore. The denials are no longer buried. See, now they're really up in awareness for us to look at with Jesus. There is one thought in particular that should be remembered. Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding us throughout the day. It is the thought of pure joy. Oh, let's do that again now. The thought of infinite joy. Just be so filled with the thought of infinite joy. A thought of limitless release. Limitless because all things are freed within it. You think you made a place of safety for yourself. You think you made a power that can save you from all the fearful things you see in dreams. It is not so. Your safety lies not there. What you give up is merely the illusion of protecting illusions. Boy, this is so deep. See, the ego goes, oh, I'm going to sacrifice everything. You're going to be sacrificing everything to go to God. When really behind that, it means I want to keep illusions. That's what that means. You can ask Jesus for the translation on that because everybody can hear him. So Jesus, when I say I'm worried that I'm going to sacrifice and I'm going to lose, am I really saying I want to keep smallness? It's really saying I want to keep that smallness in play. What you give up is the illusion of protecting illusions. That illusions can be protected. Oh, that is just humbling. That's really humbling. All we're talking about doing is protecting illusions. Ceasing to protect the illusion from being seen through. Never changes that it's illusion. It's just protected, defended. We're defending it through fear and anger, and all these things are just the cover over. And this is what, again, so great, because we can just go, okay, Jesus, I feel fear. What's under it? Just like he said, when you're sick, ask me to reveal to you the underlying conditions. And now he's really delivering. If we ask him, he's really, for me, he's helping me see what that means. What is the underlying condition under this experience? He'll tell you it's the desire for it. And then the desire has to be released to a miracle. How foolish to be so afraid of nothing, nothing at all. And you also hear that from the beings doing chapter 20, how Jesus, when he takes them, and they're going, there's nothing down under that stuff. And that's what Jesus is trying to, if we just give him the opportunity, which is giving ourselves the opportunity to see it a different way, that it's all nothing. We made a mountain out of a molehill. How foolish to be afraid of nothing, nothing at all. Your defenses will not work, but you are not in danger. You have no need of them. Recognize this and they will disappear. And only then will you accept your real protection. How simply and easily does time slip by for the teachers of God who has accepted his protection. All that he did before in the name of safety no longer interests him. That is a relief, actually. You know, the Spirit's very practical. But as I said, having played in the play and consciousness of being a prepper, like it would have been one mention of the coronavirus and I would have been stockpiling gold and stockpiling bags of wheat, you know, so that there would be protection. It's just so much easier to just go, okay, Jesus, do I go shopping today? Do we just pick up a few? And he was practically sent us down. We took a little wagon because we don't have a car here. So we take a little wagon, our little blue wagon. I'm sure the residents get pure entertainment out of that. There we go. The little monks walking by with their little blue wagon, and then we put things in it. It's really adorable. But to see how we feel like our safety lies by the amount of food on our shelves. I could see it. I was in that play, how much food and a stockpile, and it was all in the basement. Like I had, I had these green beans. I went to Costco or something like that, Sam's with somebody, and just bought this was remember year 2000? I think I might have mentioned this before, and just had those after 6 years or so, after they were really, really dead down there. Go down there. Yeah, these green beans are still down there. I had a little stockpile down there. That is so the play, that's the play. Fear, I can be safe. And then you start to look with Jesus and you see how impossible that is, really, how insane that is. But when we don't see it, it's just the way it plays. We'll be on coronavirus duty all day long going, what's the next news report that I have to prepare for? How is that possible? We really can't. You could be getting ready to go shopping, make a big shop on coronavirus and get run over by a truck. It's just the only way here is following Jesus and see that he's our safety. Jesus, do I need to do anything? No. So, okay. He gave us the assignment. Okay, go out shopping tomorrow. But it's not about protect yourself from the coronavirus. It's just, okay, he's practical. The Spirit's really practical. We swear so much if I follow God, how am I going to take care of myself? That is just, you start to see how insane that is. How we desire these experiences, going into a store and looking around and going, oh my God, there's no food in here. What am I going to do? Jesus is our safety. And Jesus is reminding me, like he said to me, you're assuming you need food. That's a big assumption. That's probably not popular.
No.
But he reminded me, that's what he said to me. You think you need food. As I said, it was sort of like the same thing when I had a headache and I was talking to him and going, okay, Jesus, you said you would help me with the underlying cause of this headache. And I'm going to look at it and God, my head hurts it was like, but no, I'm going to listen to Jesus. That is such good light training. Just go, I'm not, because he says it's stepping into divine power. It's not falling for delusion and knowing and having faith that there's a way through it. Anyway, so meanwhile, I'm going along, and then finally he's showing me all this stuff, and you do the tension. It's just tension releasing. And, as it starts melting away. It's just a piece of personal identity, but you don't want to see, and it out pictures his pain. But anyway, then along the way, he goes, you think you have a head. You think you have a head. So then, so then he goes, well, you think you have to eat. That's a big assumption, isn't it? Ask him. You can talk to him about food and ask him. He'll tell you the same thing. Because we can all hear him when we really want to. That's why, again, we're going to have that Tuesday session to talk to Jesus about why we don't want to talk to him all day long. Because we kind of like the power of denying ourselves. How foolish to be so afraid of nothing at all. Your defenses will not work, but you are not in danger. You have no need of them. Recognize this and they will disappear. See, we think we need them. Let's just ask, Jesus, do I desire an experience in which I think I need defenses? I just laugh when he tells you yes, because once again, Jesus is, It's, you're the Red Baron, and where you're marking on your plane, every time a plane goes down, the Red Baron would mark it. Jesus is right again. You mark it, put a little scratch. Okay, you're right again, Jesus. I think they protect me. And it's ridiculous. If we really, really look at it, when have our defenses ever protected us from anything? Like, honestly, look at it. Like, we assume it's protecting. We assume it's actually doing something. It's kind of funny, actually. It's really funny when we look at it. Recognize this and it will disappear, that we have no need for them. So let's ask Jesus, Jesus, do I have a need for defenses in truth and honesty of God? And only then will you accept your real protection. How simply and how easily does time slip by for the teacher of God who has accepted his protection? Okay, so I want to look and see if there's any little remnants of not accepting Jesus as my protection. That's for sure. Because you see how much misery there is in that. I'm going to ask him. You show me any areas where I'm not accepting you fully as my protection. And he reminds me, anytime you twitch. One twitch, the tiniest twitch, because there's always, I'm asking him, yes, there's always an iceberg under that little thing. You think, oh, it's nothing. No, there's a big, huge iceberg of saying no to the infinite right there. Just seeing the light does not twitch. So obviously I need to hear that. So he's saying it again. All that he did before in the name of safety no longer interests him. Oh my gosh, the level of relief of that cannot be overstated. Like David would say, peace of mind is no small gift. And then after we see through these desires with them, the desire to feel unsafe and desire to attack ourselves, want to kill and mow over our brother, and all these other things, and kill God and want to squash the light out of awareness. And along the way, you start seeing how these little, the paranoia, we're like paranoid. Well, I talked about it, the little paranoid, put stuff down in the basement stuff. It's such a good, it is really, really a lot lighter, not lugging around that big old sack of wheat berries. Or any of that kind of stuff, and planning for stuff too. And see how heavy because the ego works 1,000 different angles. No wonder we're exhausted. Gives us little jobs to do. Money in the bank, a little squirrel of that, a little squirrel nuts. Oh my gosh, it's funny. Yeah, it starts falling away. Safety. I've talked about it here that we have an alarm. So it was a big surprise. We're going to, in a way, but Jesus shows you he can use everything in consciousness, but it's not being, I'm asking him, Jesus, if there's one little twitch in there that I'm using that for safety, I'd like that cleared. I want to look at it. That alarm protects us. I'd rather look and just forgive it, get a miracle on it. One little twitch at that alarm. Can I have a miracle? How can we can't be at peace? That last line in the New Covenant where he's saying, how could it, with so many desires, how could we ever be at peace? And you start seeing them when they're coming up, like how all these beliefs and desires are running ramshod over every single experience. And then we're pretending, I'm fine. I'm not in terror. You're terrified. If you really look at it, until those beliefs in chapter 20 are given over to Jesus, every one of them, you can bet you're in terror. You can count on it, actually. Jesus, am I saying that? Yes. For he is safe and knows it to be so. He has a guide who will not fail. He need make no distinctions among the problems he perceives, for he to whom he turns with all of them recognizes no order of difficulty in resolving them. When that's, again, in chapter 20, when you're going through to really look deeply with a partner at the desire for an experience where there's an order of difficulty at the release. That some miracles can be easier than others. The mind is still deeply asleep without seeing that all the way, that it is all the same. Every twitch is the same. A snooze alarm, it's just a snooze button. I want to stay asleep. Let's ask him about this. Here's a good one to ask him. He has a guide who will not fail. Let's just ask him, Jesus, do I believe that you're the guide that will not fail? Is there any whinging on? Do I have any doubts that you're the guide that you could fail? Do I have a desired experience that I could fail to recognize divinity? That's another play in consciousness. Desired experience to feel like it's possible to fail at being light, to fail to wake up. He need make no distinctions among the problems he perceives, for he to whom he turns with all of them recognizes no order of difficulty. Let's just see. Okay, Jesus, do I have any belief that there's an order difficulty in miracles? And if he says yes, just admit it. And if he says no, you go until he says no, you don't have that belief down there anymore. And I just asked him, yes, so we'll definitely suffer greatly with that belief that there's a difficulty in order miracles. That's what makes it feel like there's no way out. It's a desire for that experience at miracles. Some are easier than others. That way the ego can create a timeline, stay on the timeline and not accept the correction. So he's telling us it's equally easy to accept every correction. We just like pretending like it's not equally easy. He says yes. I just asked him, I said, so a teacher of God accepts the correction quickly. See, he's not dwelling in all the thoughts and the feelings and emotion. He just goes, I'm not at peace, ask Jesus. It becomes very quick. We need to become tuned quickly into when we're in a state of delusion. He is as safe as in the present as he was before illusions were accepted into his mind, as he will be when he has let them go. There's no difference in his state at different times and different places because they are all one to God. Jesus, is there any doubt thought that the state will be the same in all times and all places? I'm willing to see it if there's any. See, the ego is going to make it, I can be peaceful when I'm over there. It's never peace because we're walking peace with two legs. I mean, that's identity. So the doubt thoughts about identity, the way consciousness plays is to make a doubt that peace is here now, here, this. And then it tells a little story. If I leave here, I'll be at peace. I'm just talking to him about it. He says, so before transitioning from one area to the other, is it a good thing, Jesus, to ask of join with the mighty? He said, yes. Because of that play in consciousness, that certain locations are not peaceful, and I have to move somewhere else to be peaceful. I'll be peaceful over there. I'll be peaceful in a different situation. That's why it's really valuable to ask Jesus, is it time to transition to a new location? Sometimes it is. Sometimes we stay in a certain location or a certain job or those sort of things through unworthiness. We really need his guidance. And he has no more need for more than this. Yet there will be temptations along the way. The teacher is God has yet to travel, and he has need of reminding himself throughout the day of his protection. How can he do this, particularly during a time when his mind is occupied with external things? He can but try, and his success depends on his conviction that he will succeed. After time, you just see there's no other way than conviction. There isn't another way other than conviction in our value, because we've been so convicted. We've convicted ourselves into the kind of hell dream that it's real. And so we have to turn around in consciousness and start have a conviction for truth. Jesus said that's helpful. I said, is it essential? He says, yes, it's essential. He must be sure success is not of him. That is one thing I'm sure of now. I know it's impossible to be successful without that help. Like, so sure. What will be given to him at any time, in any place and circumstance he calls for it. Any time. We just have to call for it. See, the caveat on calling for it is we can't call it for it as we'd like to have it. We have to call for help and then accept it as it's given. That the ego doesn't want to do for sure. It wants the help the way it sees it, the way it outpictures it, the way it pictures form will be. I'm helped if form looks in a certain way. So that's a great reminder. We have to fully accept the help as it's given by him. He must be sure success is not of him, but will be given him at any time, any place, and circumstance he calls for it. There are times he certainly will waver, and the instant this occurs, he will return to earlier attempts to place reliance on himself alone. We've all seen this. That play. Forget not, this is magic. Whenever we rely on the idea of a personal identity, it's magic because it's relying on the unreal. Okay, Jesus, just show me wherever that is. He says, I will. And magic is a short, sorry substitute for true assistance. That's why the use of these placebos or other kind of drugs is a sorry substitute for true assistance. It is fear. It is not going all the way and asking him for help all the way. Any kind of drug-induced whatever. Jesus, I'm asking him. He does not teach that. Not for an advanced student of God. I'm just asking him, is that helpful on the way? He says, no, it's not helpful. I'm going to ask him about that for in the play of consciousness, because consciousness is such a bundle of beliefs. So he knows that within the play of beliefs, if you're really wound into beliefs, then you're going to use another belief, the belief that magic actually does something. But he's just offering the fastest way. He's reminding me, saying, look, I'm just offering you the fast way to identity. It's not found through belief that a pill does something, that a pill can show you who you are, or a pill can open your mind. He says you don't need that. I'm asking him, is that helpful in any way? He says, no, that's a play. That really is a play. We're not looking with him. I'm just saying what he's saying. I just know it's for me. Forget not, this is magic, and magic is sorry substitute for true assistance. That says it all. It is not good enough for God's teacher because it's not enough for God's son. I don't know how much more clear he can get on magic than that sentence. It's fantasy. He says it's engagement in fantasy, which is a denial of divinity. It's teaching fantasy to spend time in consciousness, in the display of consciousness. See, whenever we take a pill and something seems to happen, remember that's the moving. Oh, it opened me up. I saw I was the world, but you'll see very clearly that it's not sustainable, because underneath it all is the desire to experience something. So it's an experience that arises, but it does not, and you'll see, it's just not sustainable. Because as long as those desires for objective experience are there, it may be a nice journey. I don't know, some don't have it. Some feel like they've gone to hell and back with some of those drugs. But I cannot tell you, Jesus cannot tell us who we are. No. It's fantasy. He keeps saying it's fantasy. I trust him. The avoidance of magic isn't the avoidance of temptation. We know this. Magic is temptation. I don't know how it can't be more clear. It's an avoidancy of finding the underlying cause. What's the purpose? He always says, what's the purpose? Is the purpose for seeing what's true? We don't need, as infinite light beings, we sit here and go, okay, is the light here? Do we need a drug to tell us that light's here? I can't find a way. I mean, I just don't see it. I can't find it in terms of what he's telling me about it. And he's saying it right here directly. Avoidance of magic is the avoidance of temptation. For all temptation is nothing more than an attempt to substitute another will for God's. These attempts may indeed seem frightening, but they are merely pathetic. They can have no effects, neither good nor bad, neither rewarding nor demanding sacrifice, healing nor destructive, quieting nor fearful. When all magic is recognized as merely nothing. See, magic is the belief in the difficulty and order of miracles. That's clear. The use of magic is a belief in the difficulty in the order of miracles. When all magic is recognized as merely nothing, the teacher of God has reached the most advanced state. See, that's the only state we're interested in here. The most perfect peace, supreme happiness. The mind so filled with the joy of infinite God. That's the only interest here. Why not? It's avoidance of the most advanced state, actually, use of magic. It's avoidance. I'm asking them. Yeah, because I don't want to judge anything. It's not my function, really. Function is just to hear his voice and say what he says. He said, that's love. That's all our functions. Just hear his voice and speak and say what he says, because then we're speaking as ourselves. That's the light of truth coming through us. All intermediate lessons will be but lead to this. And bring this goal nearer to recognition. For magic of any kind in all its forms simply does nothing. See, the mind's blank when we engage in magic. Oh, that's a new one there. When we engage in magic, the mind is blank. I'm asking him, confirming. He says, yes. So much love comes with that. Its powerlessness is the reason it can be so easily escaped. It has no effects. What has no effects can hardly terrify. Oh my gosh, he's so direct. There is no substitute for the will of God. That's a play of consciousness, of course. We know that because he tells us that it's to usurp the power of God, to try to have a will apart from his. Magic is trying to have a will apart from God's. The use of magic is the desire for a will apart from God's will. I'm just asking Jesus, any exceptions? No exceptions. We can all hear him. You can ask him. Jesus, are there any exceptions to magic being used to usurp the power of God? You'll hear the no. It's good to be clear on these things. I mean, it's one thing to read them in the book, but it's totally different, totally helpful when that voice comes through and you just, and then you say it, it's for me, it's for that unlearning. But he is safe from all deception if he so decides. Magic is deception, it's self-deception. Jesus, would this be, you affiliate this in any way, shape, or form with true teaching of course? No. He says when the mind's in an early state, because of all those beliefs, and it likes to kill itself or pretend like it's going to die, it has to play in that game. So he's not making it wrong because that's how consciousness plays. But when he's talking teacher of God, he's talking manual of teachers. In truly those who really want to transcend any idea of personal identity. Magic is personal identity. It's a desire to hold on to personal identity, the false. It's holding on to the false. It's self-deception. You can ask them, is magic self-deception? So we can all hear these answers from them. So I'm going to ask about that because I know I'm going deep into magic right now. And I was saying, okay, Jesus, what if somebody just is taking pills or something? Ask me. Ask me what's most helpful. See, he's here to help us out of the fantasy. So the ego will go, well, I'm throwing out all my pills. No, he's not saying, he's saying, ask me and I'll help you see that the magic does not exist. That's where he's going to go. He's going to go, let me show you the underlying beliefs, desire for the experience that makes you think that you need a pill to take care of it. And the beliefs you have that a pill has cause and effect with it, that a pill can cause an effect. When all magic is recognized is merely nothing, the teacher of God has reached the most advanced state. I'm asking him, Jesus, in truth. See, if you can't hear his voice or don't want to, maybe. But when we can hear his voice as clearly as to do and not to ask him about all magic, it's denying ourselves. It's denying supreme happiness. He says, yes, it's the means of denying supreme happiness because you feel like you're something in the world impacts something else, so it's making it real. There is no substitute for the will of God. In simple statement, it is to this fact that the teacher of God devotes his day in alignment with God's will by listening and following Jesus. See, that's the will of, we align with God's will through his voice. And that's the admission that there's no substitute for the will of God. That's the acceptance of God's will. Being one with God's will is to follow unequivocally that voice. You can ask him. So Jesus following that voice, you know, and I think I've talked about this, like sitting in the jacuzzi, having a talk with him. Like, is this given to sit in this jacuzzi? Yes. He's not taking things away from us. He's just showing us how we use things of the world for miscreation and to deny divine light. And he just told me how when you follow him, there's no miscreation. You can't miscreate. Because we're in alignment with the will of God. The will of God being to be at peace, to be our true identity. God's only will for us because we are happiness itself. So we're not indulging in the false when we're following. We're indulging, we're committed to the true when we follow. But each substitute he may accept as real can but deceive him. But he is safe from all deceptions if he so decides. Jesus, do I have the power to be safe from all deceptions? Do I have the power like right now? And just hear the yes. He says you always have this power. It's like we talked about Dorothy, you know, click your heels, you're home. Perhaps he needs to remember, God is with me, I cannot be deceived. Perhaps he prefers other words, or only one, or none at all. Yet each temptation to accept magic as true must be abandoned through his recognition. Not that it is fearful, not that it is sinful, not that it is dangerous, but merely that it is meaningless. Magic is meaningless. Rooted in sacrifice and separation, two aspects of one error and no more, he merely chooses to give up all that he never had. And for this sacrifice, quote unquote, is heaven restored to his awareness. That is such the root. And I'm sure that's going to play when we get together, you know, to talk to Jesus. We'll see how the reason we're not talking to him, because we do believe in sacrifice, that he's going to take everything away. It has to play that way. Consciousness has to play as though Jesus is going to take everything away to preserve a sense of personal identity. When the ego is giving everything away, it gives away all the kingdom. Is not this an exchange you would want? The world would gladly make it if it knew it could be made. It is God's teachers who must teach it that it can. It is God's teachers who must teach it that it can. And so it is their function to make sure they have learned it. No risk is possible throughout the day except to put your trust in magic. And he's not only talking about pills, of course, magical thinking, fantasy, the fantasy of the idea of future, it's all magic. But it's a helpful learning to see a pill and see that a pill, the belief in pills is being magic, because that, I'm asking him, yes, that learning can be transferred to all forms of magical thinking, fantasy. No risk is possible throughout the day except to put your trust in magic, for it is only this that leads to pain. All right, let's really get that part. Let's see if there's Jesus, do I have any desire, like the tiniest twitch, to place my trust in magic anywhere? He says, anytime you're twitching, you're putting trust in magic, in fanciful thinking. He said, but it's well to start with pills and potions. There is no will but God's. His teachers know that this is so and have learned that everything is but this is magic. All belief in magic is maintained by just one simple-minded illusion, that it works. So we believe our fantasies about a past and a future actually work. All through their training, every day and every hour, and even every minute, every second, must God's teacher learn to recognize the forms of magic and perceive their meaninglessness. That's pretty absolute. Every second, every hour, every day, every minute. That's the kind of focus, because we're worthy of that, to catch those plays in consciousness, to ask for miracles. Fear is withdrawn from them, and so they go, and thus the gate of heaven is reopened, and its light can shine again on an untroubled mind. Thank you, Jesus, for all these reminders about magic, and to see the way the misuse. Sin is magic. Any sin is magic. Any investment in the untrue is trying to make magic real. Guilt's magic. He says, yes, guilt is magic. It's fantasy. Ask him, Jesus, is guilt fantasy? That's a good thing to recognize. That's why he's having us go directly to desire. It's before guilt arises. Thank you, Jesus. I'm so grateful. So grateful for these joinings with the brother. And I guess we'll be back tomorrow night. We still have more teacher's manual. Obviously, I need to see some things in there. So look forward to being with all of you again. Send you big hugs from San Juan, Kusala.